Hey, greetings everybody, and welcome to the Campfire Show. Today on the show, we've got this guy right here, Stephen Brewster. Hey, Stephen.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Good, man. I'm excited about today. And you are a consultant and a coach and a creative, cool guy. We'll figure out whatever your official title is later.
Yeah,
But
title.
you're coming to, yeah, title TBD. But you're coming to us from Nashville, Tennessee. So thanks for coming on today. And here, what we do, it's pretty easy. We just share some stories and some wisdom and later on some marshmallows. So today, I want to ask the question, can you be super creative, but not super overwhelmed? So that's kind of where we're going to go today. But before we do that, one of the fun, silly things that we do here is this thing called show and tell. And so we ask people to bring a unique or weird or odd or personal or all of the above item that you've got in your house or your office or your car or anywhere. So, Stephen Brewster, are you prepared with your show and tell item for today?
I will tell you, this is probably the most intimidating thing I've done in a long time. Yeah. And it's funny because I actually teach teams all the time.
Yeah.
To do show and tell in their weekly meetings.
Really? That's cool.
I do. It's a creative exercise that in the way that I do it. But yes, I am pseudo prepared. I think my show and tell item is kind of lame, but I'm prepared. So yeah.
All right, let's see it.
Okay. So it is this speaker right here. Like for me, I'm constantly in a space of trying to be a learner, and so whether it's I'm ingesting and depositing music into my life. There's music on in our house all the time.
Me too.
Probably obnoxious, or it's podcasts coming out of the speaker. So I have speakers all over my house. It's crazy, but yeah, that's my show and tell item. So
cool.
I couldn't bring the one from the car because it's kind of connected, but
yeah.
I thought that one would work.
Good. Well, mine, see, the pressure's on me because I have to come up with a new one every time. So I'm kind of concerned that at some point I'm going to run out, but so far I'm still doing okay. So mine for today is going to be this, which is a soundboard. It's a really heavy chunk of metal from a upright piano.
Wow.
And I was on a project one time at a school somewhere, and I walked up on the stage and they had a whole bunch of black Yamaha upright pianos. And I'm a piano guy. And so I said, hey, what's going on with all the pianos? And they said, hey, we're getting all of our new pianos. We're getting rid of all these. Do you want some? And I'm like, some? That's an interesting question to be asked.
Yeah.
And so I got two upright Yamaha pianos for $75.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of them was pretty decent, and I still have it to this day. The other one needed a little work, so we took chainsaws and sledgehammers to that.
How fun was that, though?
It was fun. Yeah, there's one of my favorite bands is a band that probably nobody knows called The Art of Noise, but they had a video where a little girl ran around with a chainsaw and cut up pianos. Anyway, yeah. So cool. I'm glad to have you here. Tell us just a little bit about your job and what you do.
Yeah. So, my job, I kind of do three things. So I help churches identify where they're at, where they want to go, and then how to develop the systems to get there. So growth, organization, values, structure, dynamic, chemistry, all of that stuff. I'm a big believer in culture. I'm a big believer in leadership and leadership development and lead teams. And so that's one big portion of what I do. I also help worship teams navigate the music business. So I work with several different churches around the country that release music internationally, and I try to help them make sure that they are able to stay focused on being pastors and worship leaders and not trying to become music moguls, because that's a completely different task that will pull you completely out of ministry. And then the third thing, I help coach creatives and creative teams and bring the best and the most out of creative people as much as I can. And so it's really, really, really fun, and I'm blessed that I get to do this for a living. So
yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, the reason that we do this show is, people need to be inspired. There's a lot of there's a lot of bad stuff out there, and so we just want to put some good stuff out there. And so let's jump in and do that. So, you've been leading for a long time, and you get to work with some cool people and influential people, and good leaders, and so you get to see a lot. I mean, I know that church matters, and what we do on the weekends matter. And one of the things that I talk to our team about sometimes is this concept of church is a get to, not a have to, right? We get to do this. What an amazing privilege that we get to do this.
Yeah.
And I totally believe that. And I love your message, the never just another Sunday message.
Yeah.
So tell me, tell us the story behind that, what it means and kind of how that works.
So it's interesting. We developed that saying actually based out of a conversation about getting to versus having to.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I actually did a talk for our staff when I was on staff about get to versus have to. And it resonated so well that it became like apparel.
Yeah.
Staff apparel. And so you'll see sometimes I'll still use the hashtag get the number 2.
Yeah.
But never just another Sunday. So my wife and I were looking at our schedule, and it was like a bonkers season, and it was nuts. And we had a night service at the time. And so we went down and we were standing in the booth, and we were watching the majority of our team attend service that night and worshiping. And she's like, as crazy as this is, we get to do this. We don't have to do this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah. And not only that, but every Sunday matters. And I think a lot of times in church, we forget the power because of the repetition. What repetition can cause is it will reinforce habits, good or bad, but it will also completely numb you to the realities around you, right? And so when you get to service number 37 of the year, you're like, oh my gosh. Right. And the funny thing is that when you hit 52, the only magic that happens is that it resets to 1 the next week, right? But every Sunday is equally as important as the last one. And a lot of times I think we create a hierarchy of services, like Easter's more important than the summer.
Yeah.
Well, it is for attendance maybe, but it's not for the one person who accepted Christ that day, because that day changed everything for their life. Yep. And so you are responsible to make sure that you're creating the same type of environments. Now you may hype them up on one weekend and dumb them down on another, but the reality is, as a leader, you have the responsibility to bring the same energy, have the same standards, execute against your values exactly the same way, whether it's the middle of summer or Easter weekend. And so a lot of times I think as leaders, we get tired, and it's natural. It happens. And sometimes we just need that reminder that this weekend is as important as Easter weekend.
Yeah, that's good. Good word. So you work with lots of creative people. You are a creative person. Do you think that does creativity breed creativity? Does it replicate itself? Does it attract creativity?
So that's a great question. I think on some level that's true. But I think that on the deeper level, what creativity, if you boil creativity down to its most common and like basic level, creativity is solutions and ideas, right? And you get better creatively when you work your creative muscle. And so for a lot of us, we want creativity to be magic. And I believe that creativity is muscle, not magic.
Yeah.
Right. And so we want it to be magic, because like if I can sit in a cool coffee shop and listen to music that nobody really likes, but we all pretend we do, and drink overpriced lattes, and I'm wearing some weird thing, does all of a sudden in the ethers this thing comes down and we get it's creativity inside of us.
Yeah.
The truth is that's never how it works. It's all about muscle. It's about doing the exercises. It's about showing up. It's about being authentic. It's about doing the work that it takes to be creative. Yeah. And when we don't do that, we let that muscle begin to deteriorate. and we have a responsibility to make sure that we are constantly working those muscles. So I think that's the thing that breeds creativity. When you work your muscles and you inspire other people to work your muscles, it draws more people into the space. I believe creativity is better in community for sure. So the more voices we can get around. Now, I'm not permissioning us to have committees for creative decisions. Right. I think that kills creativity. Yeah. But when you can put people, like there's 8 really decision filters that should go into every great idea to get the most out of it. And when you incorporate those together, it really does breed.
Yeah. So what if you're I love there's so much truth in what you just said. What if you're a church that you don't have a creative foundation there, and you know that you want to exercise that muscle, that you want to start that replication and that breeding, but you don't have a creative person there. How do you start down that path to try to build that kind of a place?
Yeah. So first off, you go back to the simplest space. So what's the problem, or what new idea are you trying to execute against? Okay. And then before you jump into like trying to eat the entire elephant, make sure that you're able to execute your creative idea in a way that will earn you equity with the rest of the organization, your senior leader, support ministries, whatever it is. Don't go in there. Like, you can't go from a library to Cirque du Soleil, right? Like, that's quite a jump, right? So maybe you need to wade into that area a little bit more intentionally and a little more carefully, so that you don't lose equity, you don't lose trust, and you don't end up failing on something that you're really passionate and care about. And so take your time. Like, if you're at 0 creatively, find one incremental thing you can do to make something better and apply that, and then tell the story of the success. Right. And then identify the next one. And maybe that one's a little bit bigger and a little bigger. And then before long, all of a sudden people are like, wow, our creative team is actually being super creative right now. This is amazing how they do that. And you start to earn this equity that you will lose completely if you just like, hey, here's everything, dump it in the tank. Right. And then it just makes a mess for everyone.
Right. There are. I love the analogy of going from the library to Cirque du Soleil. That's that's a kind of a real goal for some places, right? And not only trying to do that, but trying to do that without the Cirque du Soleil budget, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the budget, the talent, the environment, the value system, right? Even if you can pull off Cirque du Soleil, if your pastor doesn't like Cirque du Soleil,
right?
Like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Like, this is crazy. So you have a responsibility to make sure that I'm a big believer in values and honoring your leadership. And so make sure that you are executing well against the values, and that you're working to create equity and trust, not trying to be a lone ranger. Because a lot of times the creative people, the artists, fall into this stereotype of being difficult or hard to work with, or they care more about cool than they do about connected. Right. And some of that's true about us at certain times in our lives. And so you just have to be mature enough to understand that if you're going to try to build something from nothing, it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes creating wins that help position you for that moment that you can take that big jump and that big leap.
Yep. I love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Let's get a little controversial here. Are you ready? Okay. Do you like controversy?
Yes.
All right. So here's my controversial topic or question. Some churches are boring.
Most.
Why is that? Why is it that we can take the most compelling message in the world, the most life-changing message in the world, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes deliver that in a way that would just put people to sleep?
Well, I think it's because we as a church, and I think this is what, like, the COVID-19 season has has helped to uncover a little bit. We, the church, are not creators. We, the church, are imitators. So what we do is we find what one person does or what one church does, and it works for their organization and their culture and their community.
We copy it.
We try to Xerox it over and over and over again. And what happens is we actually lose the authenticity and uniqueness and calling that God has on our life and on our church for our community and our people, because we're trying to be something that we weren't created to be. And so as soon as that happens, now we are a simulation of something else, and becoming that simulation is really, it's boring because you don't know how to do anything around it. You don't know
because it's not your identity.
It's not yours. You don't connect to it, but you saw somebody else doing it and it works. So you were like, yes, I'm doing it. Let's go. And so dangerous. It's so dangerous. So, I think if you think about the churches that are not boring, typically they are churches that have figured out who they are, what God called them to be, who God called them to, and then how to get there.
That's good. So your content, the way that I originally found you, I don't remember which social channel it was, but somehow I found you and started following your content. And you've got really good stuff. It's really creative, but it's also got an edge to it, and I love that it's it's kind of that edge that gets your attention. And one of the people that's on my short list of teachers that I try to learn from is a guy from your hometown, Donald Miller. And I consume a lot of content from him. And one of the things that he says when teaching authors is he says, don't tell me what you're going to do, just do it. Right. Just get to it. And then then he followed that up with just punch me in the face.
Right.
Punch me in the face with whatever you're going to tell me. And I just love that. And with the thing you just talked about comparing, I just taught a class a couple of days ago for Worship Leader Magazine, and I was talking about that same thing. And one of the points that I had for worship leaders was that you need to be vulnerable, and you need to be raw and real and open and all that kind of stuff. But on my graphic for it, the punch in the face thing is I said, be naked. That was the point. The point was to be naked. Now I could have said, be vulnerable, be raw, be real, and it's fine. But to watch these guys, to watch their look on their face when I get to this and I say, and point number 3 of what you can do this weekend, to lead your churches better, be naked. And they're, the moderators are like, just for a tiny second, they're terrified, like, where is Doug going with this? But I love that concept of just being edgy. And how does that apply to church world, do you think?
Well, so I think it goes back to that authenticity thing, though. Like some churches weren't meant to be edgy. Yeah. Right. Like if I'm going to talk about churches where I have friends. Okay. So if North Point Church was like created some super edgy thing, that doesn't really fit to the culture and the values of who they are as an organization. Now, if Elevation Church created something edgy, people would be enamored with it and want to explore it more. So anytime that you start to be edgy for the sake of edgy, right, you probably have drifted away from your true north. So, but if the edge or the friction or the controversy comes from a natural, authentic place, and it's part of who you are, it's part of the ethos and the value of what you believe, right, then at that point, it actually, you can say that about be naked, because that's, you have full confidence in what you're saying and what you're doing. Right. If you said be naked,
right. That's so true.
And so I try to live my life in a very authentic way. As a 3 on the Enneagram, I have a propensity to be a chameleon in different environments. As a 4 wing, I have a calling and a draw towards authenticity. So I'm in this constant friction in my life. But I will say that anything that you feel from someone, Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to get away with a lot more than John Maxwell.
Sure.
If John Maxwell starts to try to like drop the F-bomb
Right.
and wear a crazy hat and hoodies all the time, people are gonna be like, "What is John Maxwell doing? Is he like,
Right.
is that someone needs to check on him? Is he okay?" Right? But and if Gary Vaynerchuk sat down and was going to give us the 21 irrefutable laws, we'd be like, "What? This is
Right.
who are you right now?" So
Yeah.
it's about being in touch with who you are and the authenticity of who God made you to be.
Right.
So don't try to be something you're not, just to create the moment, right?
Yep.
You can create a different moment, because Andy Stanley can create a different moment for me than Pastor Stephen can, and Pastor Stephen can create a different moment for me than Pastor Andy can. So
yeah, that's good. It all goes back. I see a common theme here, just of knowing your identity, and I think within that identity, there's probably different degrees of edginess, and like you said, those depending on what your identity is, kind of defines what your edge looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. So we are, as we record this today, we're in a season of lots of weird stuff, right? Man, discouragement and fear and doubt and people wondering about stuff, and I think that can easily lead to being overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that you've got a great video on your site, which is a parable or a proverb of a Chinese farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to have you share that with us, just to kind of share that, first share the proverb or the parable,
Yeah.
and then also just kind of unpack it, like what you've learned from it, what it means for, what does it mean for individual people, and what does it mean for the church too?
Yeah, totally. So I need to give a little pre-setup for this. So I was going through a pretty rough season of life, and my counselor actually told me this parable. And I'd gone to counseling, to several different counselors, mostly faith-based counselors. I was in a season where I needed a counselor who wasn't faith-based. And so I chose a counselor literally off of the internet, and come to find out she was a believer.
So let's roll that video of the Chinese proverb. We'll watch that, and then we'll come back and we'll have some thoughts after that.
Hey guys, I wanted to share something with you today that has been like super impressive on my heart. Something that I've really learned from my counselor taught me this the other day, and I wanted to share it with you guys today. She told me about this parable of this proverb of this Chinese farmer. You can find this on YouTube, or it's a TED Talk of this girl who her daughter's sick, which I can relate to with my daughter having some serious major issues in her life. But the parable goes like this. There's a Chinese farmer, and he has a horse. The horse runs away, and the neighbor comes over and says, "Man, your horse ran away. That's so sad." And the farmer, in his calm and cool and collected self, says, "Good or bad, who can say?" A few days later, the horse returns, and the horse returns with 7 other wild horses. And the neighbor comes over and is like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, your horse is back. I can't believe it." And with it came 7 other wild horses. That's amazing. That's awesome. You must be excited because your farm's going to blow up now. You've 7 times the horses that you had before. And the farmer, calm, cool, and collective, looks at his neighbor and says, "Good or bad, who can say?" A few days later, the farmer's son starts to ride one of the wild horses, and an accident takes place. The farmer's son falls off the horse, shatters his leg, completely immobile. The neighbor comes over and says, "Oh, it's so sad that your son broke his leg on the horse. That you must be devastated." And the farmer says, "Good or bad, who can say?" A few weeks later, the local town militia comes looking for able-bodied young men to go to battle. And during this recruiting, they look at the farmer's son and they say, "Oh, his leg's broken. He's immobile. Lucky for him, he won't be able to go to battle, and likely we are going to lose a lot of soldiers in this battle." The neighbor comes over and says, "This is amazing. Like, your son is incapacitated. He can't go to war. You must be so thrilled." And the farmer says, "Good or bad, who can say?" My therapist, again, I said, told me this story, and it helped give us a little context to my life, and maybe to your life, maybe to where you're at today. I think a lot of us as Christians, we misdefine mile markers as finish lines. We look at the moments of our life where we think are good and we put God into that box. Oh, I'm so blessed right now. I'm so fulfilled right now. This is a God moment, and it could be. And then when we have moments where maybe things aren't going the way we like, or the way we planned, or the way we would picture God positioning them for our lives, and we apply those to the devil. And we remove our culpability from those moments, and we say, things aren't going well right now. The devil's just out to get me. Oh my gosh. And maybe he is, but maybe he's not. I think a lot of times as believers, we look at the moment, the mile marker, more than we look at the race and where the finish line is. We misunderstand the moments that we're running through, and we define them as finish lines as opposed to the process that God's trying to walk us through. Over the course of the last 2 months, Jackie and I, we've walked through a lot of process. I would say it's been probably 2 of the hardest years of our life. We've had a lot of loss. We've suffered a lot of heartache. And simultaneously, we've suffered amazing wins and amazing people in our lives. And Jackie says every day that I'm the healthiest I've been in the last, since we've been married. I say probably in the last 24 months. Because I've learned to redefine mile markers and finish lines. So today, what I want to encourage you guys with is, do not mistake your mile markers with finish lines. Don't mistake the tension that you're living in as failure, the tension that you're living in as not something God designed. Sometimes God takes us through the deepest points of tension and discomfort to help us get to the points of greatest victory. Throughout the Bible, you can find stories like this. When Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, he probably did not feel like that was his shining moment. When he got pulled out, it was. And had he not lived in the tension of the lion, he would have never lived the courage of the victory. Today, I want you to live the courage of the victory. I want you to live in the fullness of knowing that God cares about your finish line more than he cares about your mile marker. He cares more about who he's making you to be than who you are today. And today, live in that safeness, live in that safety, live in the fullness of that story, that God cares about you. He cares about your life. He cares about your purpose. He cares about what he has for you 5 years from now, what he has for your kids, what he has for your future, more than he cares about today. Okay? So, I love you guys. I'm so thankful that God's allowed me to have a small little sliver of voice into your life. And I pray that over the course of the next few months, we get to be better friends than we've ever been, that we get to connect more than we've ever been. If this video's moved you at all or spoken to you at all, I hope that you would share it on your Facebook page or on your Instagram feed or maybe through Twitter. Maybe you email it to a friend. And if there's anything I can do for you, I'm here for you. You can email me, b@stephenbrewster.me, or you can text me. My phone number is readily available on the internet, 615-457-7261. I care about you and your future. I love you guys. You mean more to me than you realize. Thank you for checking this out. I hope it means something to you. God loves you. He cares about you. Be your best.
I mean, the idea that good or bad, who can say? So many things happen in our lives that we want control of, right? We want to be able to control the outcome. We want to be able to control the narrative. We want to control what's even happening to us. And the truth is, in life, we have very little control. There are very few things that we get to control in our lives. But when you live a life of faith, you know that God is in complete control. And so when you can trust that God has complete control of your life, it allows you and permissions you to be able to look at every incident that happens, every moment, every circumstance, and identify that good or bad, who can say? Sometimes things can happen to us and we think it's the worst thing in the world, and it turns out to be the best thing in the world. You know, there's things that can happen to us that we think are the best thing in the world, and it actually isn't even that good. And we have a responsibility to trust that good or bad, God is going to deliver on those things. And so for my life, and then the part that I heard Pastor Jakes actually on a podcast last week, Bishop Jakes was talking about how he lives his life in a way that he has no regrets because he trusts that whatever happened was God's plan for his life. And so if he missed an exit ramp, he doesn't regret missing that extra exit ramp, even if it makes him 5 minutes late to a meeting because maybe God was saving him from a car accident.
Yep.
Good or bad, who can say?
Mm-hmm.
I missed the exit. I'm going to be late now. Is that good or bad? Who can say?
Right.
I don't know. It says a lot if I made it to the meeting versus if I didn't make it to the meeting. And so, it was a pivotal time in my life. It was definitely something that has impacted my life deeply, really deeply. And it's a moment that, in honesty, I am shocked that I even shared it because it was so personal. But it's definitely something that permeates all the decisions that I make at this point in my life.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for sharing it. Cause when I watched it, I mean, you can tell that it's raw. It's kind of going back to that naked thing. You were kind of naked in that moment, but it's great. I mean, you can tell that you're not just reciting a story that you memorized, but like that story meant something to you, right?
Yeah.
It impacted you, and those are the greatest stories to tell. So
Yeah,
that's awesome. I think it's just a good story of having perspective, know, and like you said, our perspective gets jacked up, in a variety of ways. And we go ahead.
Another point to that, Doug, is that our perspective, we should constantly be in a posture of adjustment, right? Yeah. If you're not looking for what's next, how you're going to develop, how you're going to reinvent yourself, how you're going to grow into your next season, if you're not constantly approaching that narrative, that reality of your life, if you are not on the offensive of adjusting your life or your organization or your team or whatever it is, your family, if you're not constantly adjusting, the outside world will then become adjusting to you. You will become adjusted.
Right.
And there's a whole lot more fun in doing yoga and getting flexible than there is in going to the chiropractor and getting adjusted. Right. and you may not want to do yoga every day. You may not want to exercise, but you definitely don't want to have to go to the chiropractor and get your bones all popped around to get yourself back straight. And so we have a response. One of the few things we do get to control is we get to control our attitude. We get to control our faith, and we get to control how we are growing and developing into the next season of life that God has for us.
Yeah, that's great, man. I have the feeling that I could probably sit here and talk to you for a couple of hours, but I won't. But there's so many good little truth nuggets, truth bombs in here. So I thank you for sharing that, sharing your heart, sharing your wisdom, your creativity. So thanks for coming by. Let's wrap it up here with one completely unrelated question to the topics at hand. So if you could think of something that you are currently terrible at, but if you could learn that skill and be awesome at it, what would that be?
So because I'm a 3 and I always want to be achieving, if I could grow in organization and details management, that would be the best.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I'm a mess, a hot mess. Here's how much of a mess I am, Doug. I was on vacation last week. I got a meeting request. It's an important meeting that I need to be at. I put the meeting into my calendar. I show up to the place Tuesday at 2:00, and the meeting was for Thursday at 2:00.
Nice.
So if I could get something figured out in my life, that would be super helpful.
Yeah. Well, mine's going to sound boring compared to that. That was good. Mine would be, I'm a piano guy, and I wish more than anything else that I could be a cool guitar guy. And I've tried to play guitar a few times, and I know, because I'm a musician, I know all the theory of it. I know, how to do the chords, but I'm just a sissy because I start to play and I get calluses on my hands, and then I want to go cry and just, I don't have the discipline for it. So.
All my guitar friends tell me that you are 10% cooler the minute you put a guitar on. So
yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks for stopping by today. I raise my marshmallows to you. I toast them in your honor for stopping by. So if you are out there watching this and any good people that we could have on the show, hit me up. I'd love to connect with them. But for now, we just want to encourage you with this until we meet next time. Remember this from Proverbs 16:16, that it is better to get wisdom than gold, and we will see you next time.